the fact that she is, you see, she's not looking at the food, she's looking elsewhere, and she shows a very, very good very good coordination. So it's not just hand-eye coordination, right? So that's above hand-eye coordination. That's a very important kinesthetic coordination. So that's really a very, very important thing. So that's why is that? So that means that in her brain, she has this capacity. So because, when you will look further at her walking, you would see that the walking itself is not so variable, not so like diverse and so on. So it's relatively simple in nature, and she relies quite a lot on the eyes and so on. But the important thing is to understand that when we talk about the brain, our first thing is to understand what are the best things, the best coordinations, the best actions and perceptions combination that the brain is capable of, right? So that's really important. So if we talk about the brain, the cortex, the higher level of the brains, so it does two things. On the one hand, it delivers the actions, right? It delivers the actions. On the other hand, all the way from the lower level, right? So you see from the reflex arcs, so their integration, and then through the spinal cord, at least like six levels. So that's the perception that comes in, right? So you see action, perception. So that's why it's important for us to understand what is the current best integration that she has, action, perception. And if she has it in her brain, in her central nervous system, that's a very important thing, because that's universal. There is no such thing as, look, the action perception mechanism works for the arms, but then somehow the brain sort of forgets what to do with the legs and then gets confused. So if the brain at the level of the cortex, which is like very mixed in its performance, is able to get such a quality, so it means that the brain itself has the ability, has this machinery, has those links to integrate other parts. So that's very important, because what we have to see here, you see today what's happening. You, with considering her legs, you are in the program of the rehabilitation. And rehabilitation is based on the idea of training, showing her, doing all sorts of corrections, and so on. So that's the system that kind of physical therapy, occupational therapy, and so on brings you in. But the problem with it is that it tries to kind of chase and force, quantitative results. Speaking of the balance, of the speed, and so on, and how many steps she's able to walk, and so on, how straight are her legs. So it gets you into this kind of line. But what I want to highlight here is a different thing. So look at that. She is able to get this excellent coordination, the position of the arm, the angles at the elbow, the angles at the shoulder, the positioning of the shoulder blade, the relative positioning of the neck, the tension, the grip that she provides to the spoon, and that she is able to bring it very, very precisely to the mouth, and on top of it have an additional plus. She's playful. She's able to do two things at once, right? She's able to kind of communicate visually with you in this situation, at the same time, play with food and also eat the food. So, and that's where we bring the central question. The central question. Did you teach her to do this? And the answer is no. She learned that herself. That's her own creativity. Maybe, you know, like you created some small things, some small opportunities for her, but this is what she learned herself, and that's what she learned through her own exploration. That's the key thing. And that's bringing a very important question, the biggest question. Do we trust her brain? Right? And I put all these good things here, right? Trust the brain and say, hey, you know, this brain knows what it's doing. This central nervous system is capable of delivering this sequence, action, perception, able to do the self-correction, able to do the exploration, able to draw the right kind of stimulus and the right integration. So that's the trust which we would, for example, have in a healthy child. But the thing is that when it comes to the rehab, typically it's a distrust. It's the situation when say, oh, you know, the brain doesn't know what it's doing, you know, we have to show her from the outside, we have to force her legs in certain positions and so on. So because they are not straight, you know, the heel is going in the wrong position and so on. So my point is different. My point is saying, hey, you are in a very good situation that her brain, for the arms and for the integration with the head, you know, with the head and neck positioning and the torso positioning, her brain has shown us that she has this capacity. So what does that mean? That changes the total perspective. So instead of the rehabilitation, when we teach her, we impose things on her in the functional sense. We talk about the different approach, which would be about, could be saying, you know, potentiation, right? So you see how to improve her potential, so give her brain better opportunities, better connections to work with, so potentiation and facilitation. So facilitation, sort of reducing the obstacles. So that's what we are looking at in this type of the scenario. So that's a completely different philosophy. So if you want to understand what's the difference of ABR, so that's exactly this. Yes, we still have the name rehabilitation in the name of ABR, but the philosophy and the approach is completely different. So we are focusing on potentiation and facilitation as the main thing. So that's really the key. So that's why everything else that I'm going to explain about how we would look at her, you know, at her movements, at her walking, and the other elements, we would be looking through this lens. What is her true natural, her own potential, her own capacities, and you know, what are their like deficiencies and weaknesses, and why her brain adjusts the way it adjusts. So, you know, that's a very important thing, to change the whole perspective, that we are trusting the brain. We can see that her brain has shown the capacity. By these simple moves, it has shown us that the capacity, that it has enough of the, you know, of this quality of connection within it. And if it works for the arms, that means that this capacity in the brain exists for the entire body. So that's the number one central point on which we will rest everything.